just remind everybody to join that the meeting is getting live streamed, and if you wouldn't mind just using the chat bar and just to sign in, we'll use that for minute taking purposes. Thanks very much.
You okay, Matt? You all ready now? Okay. Right, good evening and welcome to your community board meeting. I'm Councillor McLaren. I will chair the first part of your meeting. Please remember that these meetings are live streamed and the public are watching at all times. Please be courteous to others and allow the person speaking to finish. Would you all kindly put mobile phones onto silence so we don't get disturbed during the meeting? Okay. Could we have apologies? Any apologies to be put in?
Councillor McLaren, we have Raymond Taylor sent apologies, but Evelyn Ryan is attending in his place. Marvin Mackay has sent his apologies and Alice Morton is attending in his place.
That's okay.
Councillor Doolan has sent his apologies and Gabby Mitas.
Okay, I'll mark that down. Right, that's fine. We go now to minutes arising from the previous meeting. Are there any minutes arising or any matters arising previous meeting? No? Two. Brandon, you were in first. What's your matters? You're on mute.
Right. All I was going to ask was, the minutes seem to come out very late and don't give us an opportunity to be able to respond back to them for agenda items.
Okay, so that's fine. That'll be noted, Brandon. Alice? You're on mute, Alice.
At the last meeting, we were promised a report regarding the allegations that were raised in August and in November. And is the report available? This was raised in August. There was allegations of crookedness. It was raised again in November, where it was subsequently referred to that this was in connection to governing bodies. And we were promised that there would be a police report available to this board meeting regarding this item. And it would be in the interests of transparency, since this was made in public, that the governing bodies are named.
Thank you, Alice. Inspector McLeod, have you done any further investigation into the recent allegation of other groups? If not, could you do an investigation and report back to this board?
So I'm afraid for us to conduct an investigation, we'd need somebody to come forward and make allegations.
Sorry for butting in, Inspector. The allegation was made at the last board meeting. If you go back in the last board meeting, you'll see it was withdrawn, and the statement was due to other groups.
If I could clarify that, Councillor McLaren, it was governing bodies.
Governing bodies. So could you re-look at that, Inspector?
Yep, I'll certainly re-look at that and I'll get back to you.
Great, thanks very much for that.
May I add, to finalise this item must be clarified by the next meeting. It is 6 months that since this item was raised, it is serious to raise an item like this in public, and in the best interests of the board, this item should be clarified in a report submitted at the next meeting.
Fully agree with you on that, Alice. Thanks very much for that.
Sorry, Councillor, can I just come in there? Sorry, it appears to be an allegation as if we've not looked at it. We have looked at it, as I clarified with yourself, Councillor. In order for this to go forward any at all, we'd need somebody to come forward with anything of any substance. As it stands just now, there is no allegation made and there is nothing to investigate. But if there's anybody at today's forum who wishes to come forward, they can contact myself directly.
I believe, Inspector, it was made after that. They withdrew that statement and said it was about other
governing bodies.
So if you could investigate that for us, or have a look at that, and get word back to us for the next meeting, I'd appreciate that. Okay. Nothing else. Right, we're going to move on now to number 4. Chair of the Community Board, as we spoke at the last meeting, to make arrangements for a chair. Louise Sheridan had put her name forward. Unfortunately, Louise has withdrawn her name. And we have got a member of Ward 6, person very well known to us all, is willing to take over for tonight, and obviously as a revolving chair. So if there are no objections, we'll carry on and let John Wilson take over the chair of the meeting from tonight. Is that okay? Is that agreed?
Thank you.
Great. John, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Right, John.
Thank you, John.
Can I pass the meeting over to yourself, John?
Yeah.
It's in good hands. I know as all the meetings that you've had, you've been a good attender, John. Don't think you've ever missed a meeting, and I know you'll certainly have plenty of input. And best of luck.
John, I think you know me by now. I've always got plenty of input for meetings. Thank you very much indeed. Hopefully, in future meetings, the transition will be more smoother. The person selected to chair the meeting will have been decided prior to the start of the meeting, and they can open up the meeting and take the meeting forward. You have an agenda in front of you all. The next thing on the agenda is the General Community Board business and updates. And item 5 is driving digital locally. And Linda Johnson, I believe, is going to do a presentation.
Yes, that's correct. Thanks, Matt. So Matt and I are going to prepare do a double act with this presentation tonight. So hopefully I'll be able to give him the right nod when I need the slides changed. So thanks very much for allowing me to come along to your meeting tonight. I really just wanted to make some hooks for future meetings for you all, and to talk a wee bit about the Council's digital programme, which has a huge impact on our communities, and to ask for involvement. So really, Matt, if you could just move on to the next slide, please. So a key objective from the outset of our digital programme has always been about community involvement. And we did have quite a few activities planned, but unfortunately with the pandemic coming along last March, a lot of that programme was disrupted. And we had made good representation with the tenant participation work through Stephen Llewellyn's teams, and also with our young people as we had engaged with them in the lead up to the climate change workshops that we were going to be taking forward from March onwards. And all of that couldn't take place for various reasons. So really for me, being here tonight, it's to kickstart what we are now looking at, driving digital locally, and what that means to you as a community board and your involvement with that. It's essential that we get, I suppose, discussion through all of the community boards, and we recognise that no one fits all around our digital programme. So Matt, if you could move on for me. I'm just going to highlight 4 main things that I'm going to touch on this evening. The journey, which I'm going to provide you with a bit of context about where the Council's digital programme is currently. I'm going to talk a wee bit about what we mean when we're saying about driving digital locally. I'm going to ask you to do something with us on our behalf and also for yourselves and then I'm going to give you a takeaway, which is an opportunity to represent somebody from your community board to be involved in this journey with us. So if we move on, Matt, we'll set some of the context that sits behind it, and that's great, thanks. So within the council, I'm sure at this community board you'll have received information and presentations about the plan for North Lanarkshire, which is an all-encompassing plan. It's not just about the council's views, it's very much about our community planning partners, and many of them are represented at your meeting this evening. Within the council, there's a programme of work, which is our work activities that support the delivery of the plan for North Lanarkshire. And within the digital programme, we have a number of activities that are highlighted on the left-hand side of your slide around the transformation programme for digital, about communication and engagement activity. And I'm joined on this meeting this evening by our new communication and engagement lead, who has yet to take up post, but will be starting with us in March. And a key piece of work for Lynn will be the Driving Digital Locally programme. We've got the Customer Services Hub, which we are driving through redesigned services, which will allow more self-service, which means that people can access council services at a time that's convenient to them, not just what would have been termed previously normal business hours. A very important part of the digital programme is also about upskilling our workforce and also upskilling our communities, and I'll talk a wee bit about that in a minute. And also it's about driving our business intelligence model. So as you can imagine, within the council and our partners, we've got a huge amount of data that we dissect and provide information on, very much to the community boards as well. And one of the key things for our digital programme is the development of a one-stop portal for all information. And it means then we've got a single source of truth, regardless of who's using the information. As I've said, all of those pieces of work support the priorities that are contained within the plan, and that's the piece in the middle of your slide around improving economic opportunities, supporting our children and young people, improving our health and well-being, improving the resource base across North Lanarkshire, and also enhance participation, capacity and empowerment across our communities, which of course the community board is doing this evening. To the right hand side of your slide, you'll see that there's a number of other areas of programmes of work, and these are indirect pieces of work that still link in with the digital programme and the business solutions overall for the council. And there's a number of items that are identified there. So that kind of sets the context of where our journey began. And Matt, if you'd like to move on, I'm going to talk a wee bit about the 5 themes of the digital programme. So when the council embarked on investigating digital technology and where we were going to take it, a full business case was presented back in March 2019. Seems quite a long time ago now. And as part of that, there were 5 key themes around which the programme would feature, and those are highlighted here. And of course, the one that you're interested in is the digital community part of it, but also linked to that is the digital economy and our digital transactions. And obviously I've spoken about our workforce upskilling and our business intelligence hub, which is the analytics and insight. But as part of the digital programme, we want our customers to be able to have choices, and that's what I had said about you decide when you want to engage with the council. And as we transition more of our services over the coming months and years into our digital hubs, then you will be able to access a key number of services. And those are highlighted on the right-hand side of the slide. You'll see that there's a number there highlighted in black, from 5G connectivity right through to our e-forums and online payments, our customer relationship management system, the robotic process automation that we've implemented within the council over the last few months, which takes manual transactions and transfers them into process through, as it says, robotics. That means that we can transfer staff into other areas of our business, which are more meaningful, more effective for the services that we provide, rather than the manual intervention that they have done to date. We've got a new digital platform that's been built, which is a dynamics platform, and in there we've transferred our waste services, and we're currently undergoing a number of other service redesigns that will feed into the build of the digital platform. And over the coming months, as we continue to attend community boards, we'll talk to you more about individual pieces in the lead up to them coming live, and also asking for your involvement in designing some of those service pieces of work, which is really crucial to where we want to go. So on that note, I'm going to move on, Matt. And I'm just going to talk a wee bit about what does driving digitally locally mean. So it really does what it says in the tin. It's all about supporting our residents to improve their digital skills, but importantly to ensure inclusion is maximised for everyone. And one of the key things that we've been looking at, and again, it's an ask of the development work that we'll do with community boards, is about your involvement and bringing that information to the discussions and to the build process for your community, because we recognise that not one size fits all across all of the 9 community boards. You'll have seen over recent weeks and months with the COVID-19 pandemic, the building digital skills for our children and young people has been absolutely crucial to make sure that we can continue their learning in this strange time that we're all in just now. And with some of the young people returning to school today, it's really important that we continue to develop that digital classroom, and also to make sure that the support for our young people in our learning is absolutely. I'm just having a wee look. Sorry, I'm just having a wee look at one of the comments that's come up. I appreciate there is quite a lot of jargon in this, and it's really difficult to change some of it. But again, that's where we want to continue that dialogue with yourselves, Alice, to make sure that we are reaching the right messages. And as I say, I can't emphasise enough this evening how important it is to have your involvement in that piece with us, to make sure that we can reach out to everybody and get the clear messages across to you. And I'll come back to that at the end of the presentation as well, Alice. So what do we know so far about what our communities are telling us? So Matt, let's move on to the next slide, because this is the bit that really gets to the heart of what you're telling us. So basically, last autumn, there were a number of stakeholder events. Perhaps some of you were involved in them. And one of the things that we've been looking at, along with Leanne and Matt and the team, is what did you say around the digital experience from the information that you've provided to us? And there are 3 key aspects to the information that you've given us. One is the fact that digital inclusion is absolutely critical, and that's just what I've mentioned, that it's so easy when we're developing systems and processes that we inadvertently exclude people, and we're absolutely keen not to do that. It's about affordability, and we recognise that digital technology does come with a cost, although in some areas it might not be quite as significant as you perhaps think you are. And then there's the enhanced general digital skills. And again, that comes back to driving digital locally and the role of the community boards. So as I say, there's further work to be done on this information, but it's a really good starting point for us. And then let's move on to the next bit. And that's where we start to provide you with some of the real information linked to the community boards. The reason that I'm here tonight, and my colleagues and I will be attending all 9 of the community boards, is the fact that the reach now for community boards is really significant across North Lanarkshire. We've got over 300 people attended the last meetings, and we had an additional 1,100 live streams from that. Can't really turn that opportunity down to get a captive audience and to get, as I say, you involved. So that's a lot of reach that we have. We've got a significant amount of new technology that you are all using as part of the pandemic. Who knew that a few months ago we would be conducting our meetings over web technology? As part of our pupils' remote learning, there's a number of devices that have been issued and a number of connectivity solutions. So basically getting onto the web and making sure that you have the right internet access. And you'll see there that we've got over 5,000 of those by the end of February. There's the immersive classroom, which I talked about around the work that's getting done again for communities. And we're looking at your bring your own device. And some of these you will already be aware of because they're driven by our community learning and development colleagues, and they're also driven by our education and families colleagues. So quite a lot of them, I'm sure, will either have touched you or touched members of your community. And the one thing that we continue to look at is looking at the restrictions that currently sit around some of the access and permissions that we have. And that's the last point there about making sure that our communities can complete benefit claims or apply for jobs online. And again, some of that work with the changes to library functions and so on due to COVID has become more complicated, and we continue to look at that overall. So one of the things that I talked about, and we'll move on, Matt, was that we wanted to look at how you can engage with us and how you self-serve and where we take this to. So as I said, delivering confident communities, we really do need to get into what does digital mean for our communities. We want to make sure that the best technology is available and the best processes are available. And we really want to encourage representation, as I said, from all our community boards to be involved. It's really important that we ask our community boards to promote, signpost, encourage and support others to become involved in the digital journey with us. And one of the things that we have been working on is the My Account. And again, some of you might have used this recently to register waste requests with the council, but will become more and more involved with My Account as we switch our services into what I talked about as our customer hub. So one of the things, Matt, if we take it onto the next slide, and Matt will share all of these slides with you after this meeting, but this is the one that at the moment is the crux of where we are with the development work for our digital programme. So one of the things that we've got is My Account, which is set up by Scottish Government. It's used across Scotland by all local authorities. And at the moment, we've got over 71,000 registrations for My Account across our various communities. And we're hoping to increase that to 100,000 by the end of March. So you'll see in the middle of the screen there that there's another a list of reports and so on that you can currently do through My Account. But as I say, this is one of the key things that we want to test with you and to see how this can work. And one of the pieces that is linked to all of this is the integration through My Account with all of the council services. So a big ask as we stand up our driving digital locally is to help us promote the use of My Account and the use of the new facilities that are linked to the council's website. And as I say, there's a full list of them there. One of the big things that we've switched over the last few weeks, and again, some of you may have been involved in this, was the announcement from Scottish Government around the business grants for taxi drivers. And we've used My Account authentication as the quickest and best way to take those individuals right through the business grants process into the payments. And again, one of the things about the digital programme is the flexibility and how adaptable it can be, particularly in line with the COVID responses, because we've had to work very quickly on announcements from Scottish Government and the First Minister around particularly the business grants world and stand up new services within a very short period of time to help a significant amount of people in our communities that are most in need. So again, you know, it's not all about driving our services, it's very much about driving services for individuals across the council. So the next one I've got is the takeaway that I talked about. So Matt, if we just move on to what I think might be into the final slide. So one of the things that I was here to do tonight was to promote our digital programme, but just very high level. And I appreciate that some of you might want to know more of the detail of that, and we're happy to share it. But we're asking you as the community board to use your organisations to promote and signpost people to using My Account in particular And also, as I say, we're asking you to give consideration to representing your board or your group in the Driving Digital Locally programme. And you'll see that there's a mailbox there, digitalnl@northland.gov.uk. I'm giving the information out, so please, if you require further information on the bits that I've highlighted this evening, or if you're interested in getting involved, that's the mailbox to email us at, and we'll be in touch with you. So I appreciate that was a high-level whistle-stop tour of where we are with our programme, but please be assured there's lots more to come.
Right. Thank you very much indeed, Linda. I know there's a couple of questions in the chat bar, and I'm just about to bring in Brandon. Brandon, you've got a couple of questions.
Basically, I have used my account, and I'm afraid that I find it not very good. It comes back with a standard reply that you will take up to 20 days to respond to me, and I don't actually ever get a response, and it closes down my inquiry.
Okay, Brandon, can I maybe pick that up with you separately then, and we'll see what we can do to help you?
Yes, there have been two separate incidents. One was to replenish grit bins in the Auchenlock area, and the other one was a report of tipping.
Okay, thank you very much.
Alice, you had a couple of questions as well, a couple of points.
Digital inclusion will only be successful if residents and communities do not experience digital poverty. And North Lanarkshire Council should input this. It should not be considering removing library facilities from communities where computers are used on a regular basis by members of the community. This will only be successful if equality across access to computers is available by North Lanarkshire Council. If it is not, then it's getting off to a very, very bad start.
Thanks, Alice. I'll take your comments on board.
Is Teresa Aiken? You're still on mute, Teresa.
Yeah, I know.
That's
I'm using a roving mouse and I'm not that great with them. Can I ask what resources, if any, that community organisations are going to get to support people to go online and open their My Accounts? Because when a local person comes into you and they've got no digital experience at all, there's a lot of support given to people and a lot of time and effort given to people. So I would imagine that, you know, if we're going to be pushing this out, we're going to be getting a lot of vulnerable, isolated, elderly, any kind of, you know, people with any kind of mobility, disability issues within the community coming into us. Well, what kind of resources and support are we going to be getting to drive this forward?
So, apologies, I must have muted myself. One of the things that we're looking at is absolutely that. What support do we need to provide in the communities, and who is that? How are we directing that support to? But as I said, the Driving Digital Locally campaign and the engagement that comes from that, that's where we need to find out that information and discuss it and put the best levels of support forward.
Any other questions? Can I just say before we go any further that this meeting's been split over 2 screens, so I don't see everybody's hand if they put them up, and I know some people don't have video. I can see your hand now, but
sorry,
sorry.
John, can I come back in on this again, please, if you don't mind?
Teresa?
I would think that if you're ready to roll out this programme out to communities, and you've already got 79,000 people signed up and you're looking for 100, and you're looking for the community boards to drive this forward, that resources and support would have been something that I would have thought would already been high up on the agenda, not something that you're going to be looking at in the near future. I think, you know, it's a bit of the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse here. You know, we should have already been taken into account at the very beginning of the rollout of this programme.
I don't know if you've got a response for that, Linda.
No, I've nothing to add.
It is a general concern. I think Alice has raised the thing about the digital poverty, and there is concern that there are a lot of individuals within particular communities don't have access to broadband and internet in their own home, and in some cases they don't have devices they can use. And it's only over the last 9 months in the schools where a lot of the households they were told to educate their kids at home didn't have the devices to actually do that. I know there's been a lot of work in communities to get these devices into these families, but the reality is if you are going to go down this digital route, then it needs to be much broader in relation to looking at digital poverty, access to devices. I know you're saying about community centres and libraries, but no libraries are open at the present moment, no community centres are open, so therefore there is still that issue for many families and individuals. They don't have that digital inclusion that we're supposed to be trying to achieve and aim towards. I've got Councillor Anderson had a question.
Thanks, Chair. Really, I wanted to come in, but Alice has made most of the points. Further to Alice's point, I'd like to know, Linda, how the Wi-Fi availability and space to support benefit claims, etc., will translate to the ridiculous mobile library, which is proposed at tomorrow's Education Committee. And that's particularly important in the post-COVID recovery. Another issue, I had a meeting with Robert Steenson this afternoon regarding the winter maintenance issues, the lack of grit and everything on the pavements during the recent cold spell. And the communication around that was appalling as well. It's not possible for the phone system to take more than 20 calls and the queue just cuts you off and you have to start again. That's not acceptable, as John's mentioned as well. Many residents can go on or don't want to go online and they just want to make a quick phone call. We have to incorporate that as well. Thanks.
So at the moment, Councillor Anderson, we do have the Customer Services Hub, which is where calls are still being directed to. As far as the specific points that you've raised, I'll pick those up separately and I'll come back to you on those issues.
Right. Samia.
Thank you. The items that you said that we can use my account for, it just seems to only concern items which are used. So what I don't really understand is what part of it encourages any sort of community cohesion, and in saying that, what's the incentive for community groups to actually advertise this?
So one of the things I had said is this is us at the start of a journey. We have only recently stood up the new platform that we have within the council. The 4th of November was the go live date. So hence the reason, the timing of coming to the community boards. I think one of the things from all our points, Samina, is that we want to make sure that we do tackle the digital poverty within our communities. We do want to make sure that we upskill our communities as far as digital skills are concerned, particularly when it's linked to employment. Because before the current pandemic, a big part of the digital programme was also about inward investment and making sure that we could encourage companies to come and put down roots in North Lanarkshire, and we want to make sure that our residents are as upskilled as they possibly can be. So there is a huge stream around that whole digital skills piece. And again, we want to bring further information to the community boards specifically around that and the upgrades to connectivity. So from that point of view, the joint work between ourselves and community boards and community groups is very much about making sure that we can encourage inward investment, make sure that our people in our communities do have the right skills to be able to take those jobs. And I do think that it's a partnership piece of work that needs to be done around that.
Isabel Kelly.
Hi, Linda. If I've got this wrong, I'm sure you'll correct me. It's your flip programme regarding education. I read a brief note on that. I've got concerns in that I could see part of the curriculum being delivered in that you give students pupils instruction for part of the lessons to take away with them and to do electronically. Now, the amount of homework that kids can get when they have got quite an academic programme, this seems to be another tool where the curriculum is not being delivered in the classroom. I've felt for quite a while, looking at some of the young people, that a lot of the work, and I'm at a different age group, but a lot of the work that was undertaken and taught in classrooms is getting left to self-help in terms of doing it at home, as opposed to having support of face-to-face teaching, even when the pandemic's not on. You know, having a kid who sat 8 standard grades and 5 hires, her homework schedule was, you know, was pretty heavy, and I felt a lot of the support was not given and it was left to homework. Now, if we're going to start to do that through electronic means and deliver part of the curriculum, where, you know, here's part of the lesson that I should be giving you, and it's through Flip, that programme, and also they have got a portion of homework. I think that we're asking an awful lot of our young people, especially, you know, from the 4th, 5th and 6th years.
So, Isabel, I mean, one thing that we are looking at is absolutely that digital classroom, and I can't disagree with you, having a child in a senior phase in school just now as well, with the levels of homework. But if there's a specific answer around that, I can ask one of my education colleagues to get in touch with you.
Yeah, I think one of the aspects I would be concerned about is if the amount that was getting taught electronically directly relates to the number of whole-time equivalents that's employed in that school. So if you have a school shortage, the resort is to go to electronic learning as opposed to get the teachers employed, and that would be detrimental as far as I was concerned as a use for the electronic platforms.
Okay, is it? Sorry, Linda, you got any response to that? No.
No, I've got a note of it, Isabel.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions anybody has? I think I can't see any hands, so I'm just going to try and sum up in terms of Linda's hopefully got a number of issues that she can take away with her. Could I make the request that in future the presentations, the material that's being used for presentations are presented to the meeting prior to coming along and making the presentation, to give people the opportunity to read them before you give the presentation? And that goes for every partner within the Community Development Partnership, that we actually all see the paperwork that's going to come forward rather than just be hit with a presentation on the night. Hopefully you'll hear that there are a number of suggestions that are being made, there are a number of concerns that have been raised, and when you're looking at that digital rollout, that you take on board these things, because one of the big issues for particularly kids that are homeschooling just now is the stability of the digital connection. Because there's no point in saying we'll homeschool you and we've got the devices to do that if you don't have the stability in your digital connection. And that is a bigger task for the council to negotiate and discuss with the digital providers out there to make sure that the services that are being offered and being provided are stable enough for the community to engage. The other issue is, for me, is one of the concerns is the DWP want every job seeker to have sign on online. Not everybody has access to online services, and if the DWP are moving down that road, then surely the council should be trying to safeguard and protect the most vulnerable in our communities that basically rely on DWP benefits because these benefits can be sanctioned if they are not seen to be applying for jobs. And at the present moment, because there are no public facilities for people to sign on online and show that they're trying to seek employment, then it means that, as I said, the penalties that DWP can impose can be quite horrendous and quite punitive in terms of what they're doing. So hopefully you can take that on board, Linda, and I'm sure there'll be volunteers who'll come forward for the Northern Corridor in relation to helping assist and devise the strategy going forward. So is that everybody? We move on to the next item. The next item on the agenda is general updates, terms of reference, feedback, and it's Christine Boyle that's I've got listed against this.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I want to first of all thank everybody who has responded and given their views on the draft terms of reference that was circulated. There was a number of things were identified through people putting forward their views. One of them was about obviously the voting rights. And the voting rights themselves is about, they reflect the elected representation of the board, so elected members on the board. It's preferable that decisions are made through consensus rather than getting to the stage where there's a need for voting to take place. The consensus would be based on clear evidence and community engagement processes. And obviously voting, we would hope that voting would be rare. It would be a rare occurrence and a last resort if consensus couldn't be reached. But we would hope that any decisions made would be based on evidence, and that evidence would be through community engagement, as I mentioned before. There was some discussions about language and the terminology used, and obviously we've had that discussion tonight as well on the chat bar. There were some abbreviations, and these will be explained fully, and we'll also put in a glossary of terms at the end of the document to explain further what some of these kind of terms mean, to make it easier for people to understand if that's an issue. The terms of reference itself, as we said, it is a draft. It was a broad-based terms of reference. It was approved at the Policy and Strategy Committee previously, and there is a strict need for a strict governance on the boards. But we don't want to get bogged down in terms of kind of spending lots of time over the terms of reference. We want to kind of make sure that we have a terms of reference that people agree that we're able to kind of move forward on, and it gives us a basis for developing the boards further.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Alice?
The terms of reference were discussed quite thoroughly at our recent preparatory meeting for this board meeting, and I expressed serious concerns that I, as an individual and a contributor to this board, did not understand these terms of reference. I feel that the approach taken in disseminating these and achieving a consensus in these has not been reached. The Northern Corridor Community Board must have a clear basis for progression of this board, and I had suggested at the preparatory meeting that a tutorial be offered online where there is open discussion and clarification and understanding and collaboration on the terms of reference. I would deem myself to be able to read a document, understand a document fairly well. I do not understand this document. I do not understand the way it's presented, and I would suggest that North Lanarkshire Council arrange an online tutorial for the Northern Corridor Community Board so that we can all agree and progress the terms of reference.
Brandon, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, well, essentially, Alice has said that what we want is a proper, shall we say, means of being educated as to what this document means, because it's fundamental to how the board operates. So I concur with what Alice has been saying.
Right, thank you, Brandon. Isabel?
I'd just like to say I agree with the first speaker in terms of consensus. What we're actually saying is that we're not going to reach consensus. we're also going to say that elected members, their first duty is to the voters, not to their political party and not to the council. They're voted to represent us. So if we're in a forum discussing what is important to the community, it is certainly not for elected members to vote against the representatives that are on the board. So if we don't reach consensus, then really what does that mean? The board is here as a response for the council to the Community Empowerment Act. That's the reason the boards are here. The council has got a legislative duty to consult with the community. And this is the mechanism by which it gives them proof that they have consulted. Now, the first thing is we're only giving voting rights to community councils, residents and tenants associations. I think there's 4 groups there that only have a vote. And right away, it's community bodies. So if you're a community body on this board, if my colleague doesn't mind me mentioning, we've got Louise Sheridan here, who's friends of Gartcosh. My vote as a residents association is no more important than what Louise's vote would be as friends of Gartcosh. And a community council, if we take steps, is no more important than Anne-Marie has got in Cardown. We are all equal. We are a community body. And actually, I would go as far as to say that these terms and conditions that have been put forward are actually against the legislation. You are obliged as a council to consult with community bodies. If the community bodies are part of the board, the consultation process ends with that community body having a vote. And if you can't say in the terms of reference in part 2 that you're committed to participating in a democratic process and then bar 80% of the community bodies for voting. So it's not something that the community boards can put up with. So the council will have to relook at it. Under Section 4 and under Section 6 of the Community Empowerment Act, every community body is entitled to be consulted and they're entitled to give their opinion. And that opinion also stretches to having a vote. And I'm not going to say any more on it. This is a piece of nonsense. And our community representatives who are elected should not be voting against the community that they represent. So I don't think they will ever not have a consensus. Because if they're doing their job right and we're doing our job right, we're not going to be in contention with each other. But if the voting rights are sitting there as they are, my other colleague isn't as equal as me. And I don't think that's right.
Right, thank you, Isabel. Mark Costello.
Thanks, Chair. Just very interested to listen to the points and the feedback that's been raised here, and to give you a commitment that we will take on board the issues that have been raised here tonight. One of the things we're going to touch on a bit later on in this tonight is about further development of the board forward and about information, education, sharing information for members going forward in a training programme also in relation to that. This is certainly something we'll continue to look at. I'll give a commitment to you that we will have a separate meeting in relation to the development of the terms of reference for the board, and we'll have an opportunity to do that with the people who are interested in that. We'll get that up in place as soon as we can, Chair.
Right, thank you, Mark. I've got Lynn Sheridan had her hand up. Lynn.
It's Louise
sorry,
Sheridan.
my apologies. Louise is just too many names for me. No. Louise.
Yeah, I suppose just to follow on, and I appreciate Matt's comment there, but to say, thanks to Alice and Isabel. And I will be honest, when I read the terms of reference for the community board, and I'd volunteered to chair the meeting, and then realised actually I don't even have a vote. It definitely influenced me saying, okay, I'm not going to chair the meeting, which I decided in December and let Christine know. So I gave plenty of notice about that, but you know, balancing a very busy job, just thought, but just the point is, how do we encourage equality for everyone who's dedicating their time to attend these meetings? And just to echo what Alice has said, the chance to chat about it, not within a busy agenda like this, but just a separate space, because it seems to me like it's the foundation of all of this. That once we get a really solid foundation and a really clear understanding and agreement about how we'll operate, then I think the proceedings will, you know, go much better. So yeah, thank you.
Right, thank you, Louise. Are there any other comments? If there's no other comments just now, I'd just like to say that as Isabel and Alice are well aware that the Northern Quarter Community Forum had a pre-meeting, what effectively was a pre-meeting last week, to discuss the agenda that was in front of us. It's not the first time the Community Forum has raised the issue about the terms of reference. Terms of reference has been a concern for some time, and Matt will be well aware that I've raised concerns about the terms of reference for well over a year now in relation to the development and moving forward in relation to these community boards because of the role of communities. I'm glad to hear the comment being made by Christine that we're going to get a glossary of terms. They will get a list of the acronyms that are being used by officers. But could I also request that for the Northern Quarter Community Board that we get a list of those organisations and agencies that are attending, because we have a number of people who attend these meetings and not everybody is aware who is entitled to attend. I know there's the issue, as Isabel's raised, about the voting entitlement, but it would be useful to know who all receives an invitation to attend these meetings, because I see a number of faces, I know who they are, but other people within the community may not recognise them. There are other organisations I can see on the screen, and it would be useful if everybody knew who was being invited to these meetings and who was attending these meetings. Isabel.
Just quickly, could we also add to the terms of reference the committees that have been issued with the minutes of the community boards, so that we know exactly which committees are being informed of the proceedings, and if we could have an estimate of how much time within that particular agenda do they propose to actually give to the community board's comments in minutes.
Thank you, Isabel.
That might be an action, you know, for someone to do. I think maybe that would be for you, Matt, to actually say these are the committees that are getting a copy of the minutes, and for you to ask them how much time they're going to dedicate in their particular minute and meeting to the issues that we raise.
Sorry, Chair, I don't fully understand the ask there from Isabel. Don't really know what the feedback from this, just to try and clarify what you're asking there. We report back to the Community Empowerment Committee within the Council in relation to the outcomes from an update in terms of the community boards. That's something that goes on a regular basis. There's no particular amount of time allocated to it. It's on the agenda and it's put forward as a report. It's reported to the committee, and we deal with any questions of that come from the elected members who are attending that committee, Isabel. That's what we would do on that basis.
Mark, can I ask then and follow up to that? You're saying the report goes back to Community Empowerment Committee. A number of the issues that come up in these board meetings cut across a number of council committees. And how do the views of the community in relation to, say, planning, housing, education, roads, whatever service, how do those issues get fed back to the relevant council committees for action to be taken or consideration of the issues being raised. Because it's not just about coming together once every 3 months and sitting down identifying issues. It's about trying to progress those issues and ensure that these issues are being actioned upon. And it's how do community boards feed into the wider council structure rather than just the Community Empowerment Committee?
Sure. I can give you an assurance that if any issues are raised at any community board meeting, whether it be pertaining to housing, if it's an issue regarding planning that can't be addressed here, if it's an issue regarding transportation, roads, then that is sent to the...
Matt, I'm going to stop you there. How can planning not be considered by the Development Board?
I didn't say they couldn't be considered. I'm saying if a point is raised at a board meeting, that is then fed back to the relevant service immediately after the meeting. We will contact, if an issue is raised here, that will be sent back to the relevant head of service or other colleagues within the council to make them aware an issue has been raised, and we will feed that back into the board or to the individuals that's raised that as a concern or an issue. That's dealt with. It's not dealt with. We don't wait until the next board meeting to address that. That's something. It's an action that's taken from the meeting, and that's then passed on to the relevant service for input. It's not reported to every committee. It certainly isn't. That isn't the way that it will work. It's reported back to the Community Empowerment Committee. If there's any particular issues that are raised, and a synopsis is given of that. We won't get into the specific details of individual points that people are raising, but we'll give a general overview of the issues that were raised at the board meetings. But if somebody raises an issue here tonight, in particular, regarding a service who isn't, if there are people here from services who can answer questions, and they're obviously free to do so. If there are people here who aren't, we'll take those points away. We'll pass them on very quickly to the part of the organisation who can deal with that, and we'll feed back to the individuals who have raised those issues.
Right, thank you, Matt. Isabel.
Just quickly, Matt, so basically what you're saying is in the check sheet at the back of minutes regarding the kind of checkbox and what you're reporting, we'll be able to see which committee you've sent certain aspects of those minutes to as an action.
No, as I said, we only send in information to one committee. It's in Community Empowerment Committee. We don't send the reports to any other committee. We will raise the particular issues that are raised here by people who are attending the board meeting. We'll raise those with the services, the relevant service, and get feedback on that and pass that back to the individuals who are raising the concerns or issues.
How does the community partnership, the community planning partnership, get information regarding the community boards?
The Community Planning Partnership, as in the North Lanarkshire Partnership,
yes.
There is a Strategic Leadership Board of that meets on a regular basis. We also feed into that board to give an update on the work. That's the Community Planning Partnership as opposed to a council committee. We do feed into that as well to make them aware of the progress of the boards.
Rather than individual members of this committee going looking for minutes or know where to look for them, when you send updates to any committee in the published papers that are going back to board members, can we get a record of the minute that you send to each committee, regardless of what it is? So that's 2 committees now that you report to. So could we have your minuted progress of our meetings and with our papers, so that we know exactly what these boards know, rather than go in and try and find them?
In terms of getting a copy of the report that goes to the Community Empowerment Committee, then absolutely no issues with that. That's a report that's in public domain. That's on the council's website. But I can certainly make sure that any of the most recent report is sent out along with other board papers. Absolutely.
What about the leadership one?
The strategic
for the
we can send any information that's publicly available, then we can send that out to you. I need to check in terms of the public availability of the Strategic Leadership Board, but I don't know if Leanne, if you can help me on that one in terms of whether that's a public document, but we can certainly check that as well. But anything that's in the public domain, we're more than happy to share.
At this point, sorry, Chair, if you don't mind me attempting to answer that question. At this point in time, I don't think the NLP papers are published on Mars, but I don't think there would be any issue with sharing the update report with you, just with the consent of the chair of the NLP Strategic Leadership Board. But it is pretty much, it's the same report that goes to both. It's the exact same report that would go to Council Committee and then goes to the North Lanarkshire Strategic Leadership Group. As we said, it would be an update report we would take rather than minutes of each of the community boards, and then any particular issues that were raised for services we would highlight to heads of service or partner agencies to make sure that they were actioned and feedback into the board on that basis.
Right, thank you, Leanne. Christine, you introduced this subject. Is there anything you wanted to say, or do you think Matt and Leanne's covered the issues?
No, I think Matt and Leanne's covered the issues, but thanks very much for everybody's input into that. Much appreciated.
Next item on the agenda is the board development sessions, and it's Matt. Tell us how he's going to carry out these sessions.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to go back to something I mentioned earlier, is I've got intentions now to go forward and have, say, board development sessions, give opportunities for everybody who's interested in attending a kind of separate session, but it's about an opportunity to speak about the development of the board itself, about the community asset transfer process, the participatory budgeting process, the local development programme, just some of the things that we speak about over the course of the meeting itself, but to take an opportunity to spend a bit more time on it, speak a bit more in detail about what those opportunities, what the issues are, but also to ask the people who are attending the board meeting here if there's anything in particular. And you've mentioned about the terms of reference, that's something we can certainly look at. But if there's any other issues you think you want to take a wee bit more time and look at a wee bit more detail, so to help improve the board's understanding of any processes, any issues, not just us, but any in terms of the council. If there's any particular issues you would like to discuss in a more detailed setting, so we can discuss information, we can maybe have some presentations, some input from ourselves and other partners if required. So these are sessions that we're hoping to pick up as soon as we can after this next cycle of boards, and we'll be pulling together a few board sessions. We'll give people an opportunity to come along. I'll probably mix sessions with other boards across the area, because we'll try and get an idea from people as to what particular issues they want to raise, and then have some focused sessions on those particular issues and invite people from across North Lanarkshire to attend those. So these are things we want to take forward after this round of board meetings, and hopefully we'll bring more information to you in relation to that. But if anybody's got any ideas on that, to let us know if you've anything else they want to discuss.
Okay, are there any questions or any comments on what Matt said? I think it's a case of waiting to see what you bring forward, Matt, and how quickly you can get these development sessions up and running, so we can get, as you will continue to hear from the community in the Northern Corridor, there are a number of ideas about how we should do, or the council should be engaging with the community. So I'm sure the development sessions will be interesting and lively. Any comments? No. If no comments, move on to the next item. As Matt's up against, it's the local development programme. Matt, you're on mute.
Sorry, Chair. Thanks again. This report just provides an update to the board on the progress of some of the projects that have been ongoing in the Northern Corridor area over the last while. In the report, it shows that any projects that were in the mix for delivery in this financial year have been completed. And the second appendix shows a number of projects which are seeking to give you a further update on the ones that have been previously approved by the board. But a couple of other projects there have been put in place to be added to the holding list for delivery of projects potentially in the event that further funding is made available to the local development programme going forward. So I'm happy to take any questions at any points raised in that report, Chair.
Are there any questions, Alice?
Thanks, John. Thanks, Matt. Matt, I've already raised this point with you, that the appendix which presents the projects the information on that is insufficient. In terms of Stepson District Community Council, it would be very helpful if further information is included in the table in terms of the dates when the projects were initiated, or and also the title of those who had submitted the project. This would be very helpful, as it would prevent overlap of projects or duplicate applications for funding. So I would ask if that table could be updated to give as much information as possible, because we would wish to share this at the Community Council meeting.
Any comment, Mark?
Chair, thanks, Chair. Yeah, as I say, happy to put in a column into that report, Alice, that shows where the source of the proposal was for that, and we can make sure that's updated for the future.
Thank you.
Future board.
Can I say, Matt, in the Community Matters Local Partnership board and the boards prior to that, the community were engaged in quite extensively in terms of coming up with ideas and projects being put forward. It's just to try and find out whether or not that's going to be the system moving forward. The communities will be offered the opportunity to present or put forward ideas in terms of funding for the future, because it's been some time since we've had a chance to really review these projects, and it would be useful to re-establish that link with the communities that they can start putting projects forward.
Absolutely, Chair. We're very much committed to this being a community-led programme altogether for in terms of projects, and what we'll do is, the reason we haven't been putting out, as you maybe could see, a call for projects at this stage, is that we're not aware at the moment where the budget will be going forward. And at this stage, we don't want to add a lot more projects to a holding list that might not be taken further forward. Once we've got a better idea in relation to that, we'll certainly make sure that the board is made fully aware of that, elected members and other members of the board. We've also devised a very quick, it's not an application form, it's just a forum for people to write in some details about what the project's about, where the location they're talking about, what community engagement information they've got on it, that kind of thing. And we'll send that out to people and ask for that to be sent back into us for consideration for that going forward. But as soon as we're in a position to do that and we've got a better idea about budgets, then we'll pass that on.
Anne-Marie? Anne-Marie, no. Have you lost your sound? No, still can't hear you. If you type in your message, Anne-Marie, I'll read it out for you. Claire, I see you desperately waving your hand there.
Yeah, I'm waving my hand because I didn't know if you could see me because it's a bit dark. Yeah. It was just I wanted to bring up on the LDP programme that the cross-locality heritage project has been sitting there for a couple of years now. We've actually got a graduate in place wanting to take this forward, so it'd be really good to get some conversations going about what support could be offered.
I don't know who would be able to respond to that.
I'll just for myself again, Chair. Yeah, this is something, as we know, we've got a better idea. We'll be able to take that forward. We'll ensure they have the proper engagement with the interested parties.
Right. So, Leanne's put a message out, and I think whoever's typing on the keyboard, they're coming out loud and clear in everybody's speaker system. So if you are going to be typing, then could you request that you go on mute? Unless it's just that it can be difficult for some people to hear if the keyboard's clacking away. Thank you. Anne-Marie, I've still not got your point that you wanted to make. Still not getting in. Right, no doubt you can take it up after the meeting, Anne-Marie. Just at the present moment we can't hear you, and as I said, we've not got your message. Are there any other questions in terms of the LDPs? If there's no other question, move on to local outcome improvement plans, and that's Leanne.
Chair, I'll introduce this item and then my colleague Colin Bruce is going to cover the detail of it. Colin's got a very short just overview presentation to share with you. I think maybe Matt or Christine are going to put that up on the screen. Basically this item, we've been given an update every time that the community boards have met in terms of where we're going and where we've got to. We're developing the local priority plans. You'll know there's been a lot of engagement activity since the last meeting and even before that, probably since about August last year, with partners and community groups, organisations and individuals, with and also some work around seldom heard voices. So tonight's really about giving an update on that. A small subgroup of the community board met a few weeks ago, has met a few weeks ago and started to look at the detail that's been collated in terms of local priorities. And they've just got, so Colin's going to present some information on where that group have got to in terms of looking at what the priorities are coming out loud and clear from the Northern Corridor, and then the next steps and what we're looking to bring to the next community board meeting will be a kind of populated action plan, maybe not with the detailed actions, but certainly with what the actions might start to look like through work with local communities and partner agencies to work up the details. So I'll hand you over to Colin for a few minutes.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Always nice to see you. This will be a very quick run through this presentation. I'm hoping, Matt, you're able to put it on screen, if that's okay.
No, I don't have it. Christine, are you sharing this?
Okay, I can. If need be, I can share it. I've got it here, unless you can do it, Christine.
This reiterates the point I made earlier about reports and presentations being issued to the
I'll share it.
Development Board prior to the meeting, so we would have at least had a sight of it or a copy of it.
Okay, I'm just going to share content.
Sorry, I'm having a difficulty trying to share it just now.
Okay, that's all right. I think this is it. Here we go. I'm hoping this is the right one. Can everybody see? That should be local outcome improvement plans. Yes, we're all right. Okay.
If you put it onto the full screen presentation.
Full screen. Okay. Flip. Hang on. I know I've just
put it onto slideshow.
Collins, if you just go down to the bottom right next to the wee book, the wee bit there will help you put it onto slideshow. So the wee over to the right again. There. Yeah.
There.
Stop.
Sorry.
For those of a certain age will know that Bernie just fire.
Oh. Sorry about that, folks. So very quick run through. I mean, the local outcome improvement plans, which are here to underpin the work of the boards, and we've had a lot of information tonight in relation to data and evidence, and the local outcome improvement plans that's the information that's going to underpin the boards with the information that we have got, and we've got all sorts of information, all sorts of useful information, but I just wanted to give a recap of where we were. So, main things has been, we want to ensure that the LOIPs, as we'll just call them, reflect local community need, and with a focus on interventions, maximising shared resources, and improving outcomes for those experiencing high levels of inequality. That's an absolutely important one for us. We've done several phases of engagement work since September, and that has been really looking at mapping work with key council services and partner agencies, because what I want to emphasise is that this is not just a North Lanarkshire Council, this is North Lanarkshire Partnership, and our partners linked into that, and it's very important that it's a partnership approach, but vital that community engagement is throughout the whole process. The next part was like in local level priorities and actions was linked to priorities, strategic priorities, sorry, with phase 2, we involved stakeholder engagement. We did quite a lot of work in our local stakeholders. And then phase 3 was wider community engagement, and that was through community listening events and various other areas, seldom heard voices as well. There was a big emphasis on that. We did a lot of work in around that. So I'm just going to go to the next one. You'll see the actual, in one of the other presentations you saw the board and the circles with all the different boards within that, and all the different elements here about, and everything links into the plan for North Lanarkshire. And as I say, that is a partnership approach, but vitally important. Sorry, oh dear me, oh it's gone. Sorry, every time I press on it, it disappears. Oh, flip. Sorry, folks. All right, okay. We just have to, all right. Okay, so it's in the boards, 9 boards across the communities of North Lanarkshire, but very important for us is that the people and communities of North Lanarkshire are absolutely vital to this. The plans won't work without effective community engagement and the data and the evidence that we gain from local communities, and that's been absolutely vital part of the work that we've done thus far, and that will continue. That will continue. It's not just about having one element. Some of the information that we've been able to gain has been invaluable, and there's lots and lots, and I don't want to go over this. What I want again to say is that you will receive all this, the full presentation with the minutes, so you'll get this. As I say, I just want to have a quick kind of speed talk through this, but we've done the mapping, the stakeholder engagement, the surveys we did with various folk, the locality managers, community planning partners, local elected members, were anchor organisations, and we did wider work. We sent out a universal survey, which I hope most of you completed. Seldom heard voices, as I spoke about earlier. We had community listening events, and we've also got various committee and community board papers where there's been reference within that in the work that we're doing in relation to the community boards. So the community empowerment committees, and we've got an annual report on locality plans. So various elements of information on the extent of the engagement that has been taken thus far, and it's been quite extensive. But again, this is just a step forward. There will be more as we move forward. Now let's see if I don't press it too quickly. There we go. Phase 4. So collaborate, vital keywords, working together. We need to reflect the priorities for North Lanarkshire as set out in the plan for North Lanarkshire. The priorities for local people. We need to ensure that existing local priorities that have been identified through the previous 18 locality plans are intrinsic to the work of the LOIPs and underpin the work of the boards. Partnership action and maximisation of shared resources to improve local outcomes and tackle inequality. And and just very quickly about including place planning, town and community hubs and town visions, which we had someone obviously over at the last meeting in relation to some of that work. So there's a lot of work going on, a lot of people that we've engaged with in relation to the local outcome improvement plans to ensure that it is meeting the needs of our local communities. Inequalities is vital to the work we do and to ensure that we overcome that, and it's very important to the LOIP planning that it underpins the work and the principles of how we move forward. Effectively, working with local communities more at risk, undertaking equality and fairer Scotland impacts, targeting support to particular communities of place or interest or identity, and we need to ensure we've got a wider engagement approach, identifying communities of inequality affected by proposed action or investment. So there's a whole geographical expansive there. There's current and previous folk with current and previous experiences of poverty, that we need to still ensure that we're providing quality services and folk with protected communities with protected characteristics. And that was some of the organisations that we linked into for the Seldom Heard Voice engagement. Now, we have, as Leanne said a second ago, we had actually our first short life working group. It was last Tuesday. It was last Tuesday we had it, and it was excellent. We had 4 or 5 folk there. A couple of folk for the board that are here tonight, and it basically, as I mentioned, everything is reviewed and everything's data evidenced, and we want to ensure that the data and evidence and the information that we've got is there's a backup there, and it's underpinned by the flow of information that we have got within the communities and the engagement processes that we've been participating in so far. So intelligence is very important for us, and the professional dialogue again around emerging themes, and we also were starting to identify potential priorities and to think about ideas for solutions or actions. What I want to emphasise, this is only the first meeting. We are meeting again very shortly, and it's to kind of progress the themes and the thinking and the actions in relation to the local outcome improvement planning process. One vital element of that, though, is, and I don't use kind of jargon, but triangulation is the word. We want to ensure that the information we've got is linked up to different periods of engagement. So if we've heard it from people, we've heard a certain issue or theme or priority from Seldom Heard Voice community, and then we've maybe heard it from local elected members, or we've heard it from our community listening events, we triangulate the information to make sure there's a correlation in what we have got, and so there's evidence-based data, and that decision making is influenced by the data and the intelligence that we've got, and that runs through the LOIP process, and that's part of the work that the short-term working group, the task and finish groups are doing across North Lanarkshire. We're working towards this template that we're doing, and really just looking at community boards, the actions, the priorities, the themes. You'll get this, as I say, in your pack when you get sent the minutes. That's what we're kind of working on in relation to short-term, medium-term, long-term processes. Most importantly, though, is the folk who are involved in the short-term working group, and thank you to everyone who was able to attend last Tuesday. Claire and Louise were there. Jodie unfortunately wasn't able to attend, but we also had representatives from our partners at Voluntary Action North Lanarkshire and NHS Health Improvement, as well as ourselves and the community partnership team. So it was a good discussion. We were able to look at certain issues, but also to provide the short life working group with the information that we have gained thus far through the different ranges of engagement processes that we have taken, that we have moved forward thus far. I want to just give you some early feedback on what came out. Now, Claire and Louise, you were both there. A lot of this information was kind of discussed on the night, so if there's any kind of things you want to clarify, I'm quite happy for you to come in. But certainly just the kind of the main points, access to cross-boundary health and social care. Milliston seems to be an area where there are some challenges, and that was brought up. Community health and social inequalities in areas not reflected within the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, and that's just one element of information or data gathering. There's different ways that you can look at social deprivation. Attainment and engagement in mainstream education, exclusion from the town centre vision programme. Inequalities include financial insecurity, digital exclusion, which we've talked about earlier, and access to free college courses in life skills. So sorry, that was very early feedback. Some of the emerging themes, COVID COVID-19 pandemic recovery. Obviously, you know, I think we're all living this, so that's going to be a big area of challenge for all of us. Community mental health and well-being, community links and building relationships and trust, befriending, homeschooling support and information sharing, and ways to move that forward. I'm just going to say this one. Priority communities and communities of interest. Now, this was really just about, the data and the evidence that we've got and the information that we received on the day from the group. As I say, this is just a moving feast, so we will be talking about these themes and priorities as we move forward. Millerston, Cardowan, Moodiesburn West, young people, older people, so priority communities or communities of interest. But there was also, and Claire, you had brought this up, about areas such as Marnock, Mount Ellen and Moodiesburn East, and we need to look at reviewing and considering the data on these areas, and ideas for initial priorities, COVID-19 recovery, community mental health, community link workers, youth work provision within schools and the wider community, and information and communication on the board and engagement processes and promotion of service availability. That's something we've spoke about tonight. So it's very important that the voice of local people are involved in this, and we'll go on to our second meeting, and that's on the 2nd of March we're having, and it's really just to kind of move forward, start looking at linking things together and our data and the evidence and the experience, the lived experience of folk like like Claire and Louise, who actually are living in the Northern Corridor. So we've done an extensive piece of engagement. There's been a lot of really vital information come out of this, and this will help us. As I said at the very beginning, we need this to underpin the work of each of our community boards to then ensure that the data and the evidence reflects what local people are saying. Now, as I say, this doesn't end, and what we will be doing is doing a final. There's aspects of this, and we will be going out to the wider community in the near future again, once we've got it near finalisation, to look at linking and to make sure we're on the right track.
Colin, could I maybe just finish off there? If you don't mind me just coming in and maybe finishing off. This is a big piece of work, and it links in the comments made earlier about the Community Empowerment Act, etc. These plans absolutely must be driven by the community, and therefore the community board have a massive role in the governance around this work. So what Colin's outlined there, and the reason we keep coming back with so much detail in the process, is that communities need to own this. We do not want this to be a plan that's led by the council or any other partner. This is a partnership between the council, community planning partners and communities. So really just those priorities there, any feedback or anything, they've basically came from the community engagement and linked into the priorities within the plan for North Lanarkshire. So what we'll do is we'll bring a more detailed plan, and actually what we might do is organise a targeted focused session, because I think this work requires a bit more detail, more detailed input from the community board than it being an agenda item. So we might look at doing something like that in future, so that there can be a more dialogue around the plans.
Right, thank you, Leanne. I can't see anybody on the screens because of the presentation.
Yeah, I'll just stop the presentation. I hope that's anyway. Stop sharing.
What I want to do first of all is bring in Louise or Claire, because they both attended Lloyd's meeting, if they've got any comments on the presentation that's been made. Claire?
It's a fair reflection of what we discussed. It was a long meeting, and the feedback section was a kind of bit short. But there was a
Sorry, Claire, we lost you at the end.
Like I was saying, as John's saying, with the information for this, it's useful to have it in advance and read over it yourself, and then have more time to respond to it.
Right, thank you, Claire. Louise? Is Louise still around? No, Isabel.
Can I just say, is there an opportunity still to join when the the meetings were on and you had something else on, so I didn't participate. Can I say, and no reflection on you calling or whatever, a lot of this is double Dutch to people. You know, there's a lot of people who are looking at it and they don't understand. And the other thing is, we had already said, Leanne, that we didn't think the methods of engagement, we took part in the listening event, which we felt were pretty superficial. And at the last meeting, we made comment that, you know, we didn't think there was enough engagement with the community, and you said that there would be a lot more. Now, maybe things that maybe pass me by if anybody else wants to comment, but I haven't been involved in any other comments or providing any other information other than the listening event that I went to. So I haven't seen a lot of action. You might have been doing it with other groups that could be involved in, and it's an unfair criticism, but I can't cite any information that I've been asked to give or contribute to. So if the question for the 2nd of March, if I could be included, I would be.
Councillor, if you don't, Councillor Chair, if you don't mind, I'm happy to respond to.
Can I take it? There's a couple of. I think there's a couple of people who've got their hands up. Leanne, I would rather take. I'm now looking at the timing here, and there's still a number of items to go through.
It was just if Isabel wanted a response, but that's fine, no bother.
No, I never. Leanne, I said you'd get to respond after I took the next person in.
No problem.
No, you've agreed the community reps should chair meetings. I chair a meeting. I wouldn't allow community reps to jump in, Leanne. I'm not allowing officers to do that. So I think Teresa Keating had her hand up. Teresa. Sorry, Teresa, we can't hear you. Your sound's off. No, still can't hear you, Teresa. I need to. Right, Leanne, do you want to respond to the issue that was raised now?
No problem, Chair. So in terms of, it's absolutely not too late, Isabel, to be involved in the short life working group to get to the point where the plans are kind of not finalised necessarily, but ready for to be published in terms of what the priorities are. The second part around, there is a report which we can send to you that went to the Community Empowerment Committee, but it's a version of the report that came to the last community board meeting, and it outlines the engagement process. So there were a number of things as well as community listening events. There were stakeholder sessions, there was a survey that went out, and we obviously took feedback on the basis of the last meeting. So there's a significant amount of engagement that has taken place in a number of ways. There's some very targeted work that's taking place with seldom heard voices. So there has been a lot of engagement with different people at different times and using different methods. So I apologise that you didn't feel that you were particularly involved in that or as involved as you might have liked to have been, but it doesn't end here. We're not going to continue with the wider engagement around priorities because we've done a lot of engagement in each of the areas around priorities, so we know we've got a lot of information about what the priorities are. We've also got a lot of data that tells us what some of the challenges within communities are. So what we'll be bringing back at the next meeting, and the purpose of the short life working group is to work through that information that's come in from communities, to refine it and to work it into a set of clear priorities for each of the 9 community board areas. And we'll then be doing further engagement around the priorities. So say, for example, poverty was a priority, we'll be doing specific engagement around that priority and how that might translate into an action, and who might lead on that particular action, for example. So that's where we're at in terms of engagement, but I do apologise if there's been opportunities that you feel that you've missed, and we're always happy to take these. This is an evolving process. The plans will be reviewed regularly, so it's not like once they're published, that's them. There'll be like 6 monthly review and then annual review and reporting.
Right, thank you, Leanne. Any comments, Isabel?
Just to say, Leanne, as I say, my comment might have been unfair comment because you don't keep up with every single piece that comes through, or you don't take the opportunity. That's why I said my comments might be unfair. But from the board meeting, we did feel as a board that there wasn't enough engagement, and you said there would be a lot more. You know, if that's been targeted at specific groups and it's not been you know, the general population, then fair dues. But as I say, if there's something going on in the 2nd of March, I'll certainly take the opportunity to join in.
Are there any other comments before we move on?
John?
Teresa, Keating? Teresa?
Could I just say there may have hear me now, John?
Sorry, Teresa?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
There may have been mishaps or spaces or gaps or whatever you like in the past. I think the main thrust of what we're saying now is to make sure that everybody is kept up to par from this minute on, because I kind of agree a bit with Isabel. Things haven't been as fluid and as fluent as they should be, and I think that can be rectified as from now.
Right, thanks, Teresa. I think just a final comment on this is it would be useful. Oh, sorry, I've got Councillor Anderson.
John, I'm really struggling. There's somebody unmuted. There's a lot of background noise, and I'm really struggling to hear people when they're speaking.
Right. If people could mute themselves if they're not speaking, then hopefully there won't be any background noise to interfere with the volume and the sound coming on other devices. I was just going to say that in terms of the work that's going forward, and given that the development board, community board is, and community reps on the community board are being asked to approve some of these plans, it'd be useful to see the detail of some of the work that's going on behind the scenes. I've said this in the past, that is about working to the benefit of the communities. And we have, I've certainly raised questions about some of the statistics that have been produced and some of the data that's been circulating in terms of the proposals. So it'd be useful if Community Development Board members were able to see some of that information as well, so that when we are being asked to make decisions and take forward the plans, that we're making those decisions based on full knowledge and understanding of what's coming out. I'd also ask what work, the LOIP, as Colin described it, has identified a number of areas. I think it's 4 or 5 areas for particular attention. What work is proposed to take place within those areas? Because one of the problems with the community empowerment legislation is community empowerment legislation was to legislate to allow communities themselves to fully engage, not to have people imposing policy on them, but to actually have these communities engaged in a process that they understood what the issues were and were able to reflect their experience, their lived experience, in terms of the issues that were being identified. So it'd be interesting to find out, has work been done within those particular communities that's been identified to ensure that what you're proposing to take forward fits in with what these communities actually need or feel they need to help them move forward. So it's just a general comment about the working with those individual communities. Anybody, any comments? No comment. Teresa? Teresa Aiken, that is, not Teresa Kane. Teresa?
I'm interested to find out what data has been obtained in Marnock and why Marnock has been picked as one of the areas, when in actual fact Marnock sits at the heart of the whole of Glenboig. So I would like to be involved in that short life working group, Leanne, if you don't mind, please.
Right. Anne-Marie? Anne-Marie, can you come in now? Anne-Marie, can you hear me? Still having problems with your sound, Anne-Marie? No. Not getting anything. Claire, I'm going to bring Claire in.
Just to Teresa. Teresa, when I did a kind of deep delve into the 2020 SIMD statistics, Marnock did come up with fairly high rates, but the suggestion was that Colin contact you about it, having much better information than SIMD stats have. And I think the more people that join the group from different villages, the better.
Teresa?
I don't want to take up too much time because it's tight for the end Yeah, Claire, the problem is that we don't really come quite high up the SIMD anymore, but that's for a discussion for another meeting, I think, you know, so I'm happy to join the Short Life Working Group, and you know, if it's something that's going to be good for our community, then we're interested in being involved anyway, for growing and expanding the community.
Leanne's put out the message in the chat bar saying that if anybody else wants to get involved, to let her know. I've just made the plea again, if we are identifying areas, then it might be useful to get representatives from those areas involved in the discussions, so that they have like Anne-Marie and others that are living in these communities that can actually feed back in relation to the issues being identified. So I just make that plea. Any other comments before I move on? No other comments, and these points will be all taken on board. We've got the board reference subgroups. Colin?
It's not Colin, don't think, is it?
I've got Colin. Colin's name's against the board reference subgroups.
Chair, Colin's talking about PB as part of that.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Thanks again, folks. This is about obviously participatory budgeting, and just some information for you, really. So we will be establishing a subgroup of the board to take forward participatory budgeting and community benefits delivery that meets the needs and aspirations of the local area. So what is PB? So PB, Participatory Budgeting, complements the objectives of the Community Empowerment Act, which provides a legal framework to promote and encourage community empowerment and participation. So one form of PB is to deliver local projects following a public vote on submissions. It is envisioned that the community board would lead on such PB processes in their local area. It's important to stress that budgets for delivery of such PB are yet to be confirmed for the coming years, but we would hope to establish a subgroup within the next month to start looking at the processes and governance required to deliver this if and when budgets become available. Mainstream PB, this is the second element in our forum. Mainstream PB involves council services engaging with local communities to shape and prioritise identified areas of service delivery. This could include things such as the town and community hub development, green space developments and community benefits delivery, which takes me on to what is community benefits. So community benefits are tangible benefits provided. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'll just keep going, Chair. Community benefits are a tangible benefit provided by a supplier or private sector partner which is additional to the main purpose of a North Lanarkshire Council contract or agreement and provides added social, economic or environmental benefit to the local community. Community benefits do not apply to contracts out with the council, such as private housing developments. Community benefits can include but are not limited to targeted recruitment and employment.
Colin, I'm conscious that we're running out of time for this meeting tonight. Once again, I would make the plea, if you're going to do a presentation like this, put it in writing, submit it to the community board, so the community board have sight of it before the presentation is made, and we can comment it. And it's not on my agenda. I received this agenda this morning, and it's not on my agenda for the agenda tonight. There are other items on the agenda that I think are more pressing and more relevant than PBs. And given the comment that was made earlier about we don't know what the budgets are going to be like, then what I suggest is if we bring this back to the next the community board meeting with a written submission prior to the meeting, so the members have actually had sight of it. So I'm going to move it on now, and I'm going to go to the item that I've got on my agenda, which is the board reference subgroups. And I don't know what officer is taking that forward. I've got Colin Bruce's name against that, and I want to move on to the board reference and subgroups, because we've been discussing this for the last two meetings. About that's 6 months we've been discussing the issue about board reference subgroups. There have been a number of subgroups that have been recommended or suggested, and I'd like to know if these are going to get taken forward and when they're going to get taken forward.
Chair, Matt Costello here. Can I come in on that? Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Just to pick up very briefly what Colin was talking about there was an agenda that we wanted to give people an update as to where we are in PB, and some of the updates will be verbal updates, but we'll certainly ensure that the notes are pulled together so you can get a full input as to what information has been discussed. In terms of the subgroups, there've been a number of subgroups that have been suggested, and there are a couple more in the chat bar tonight. As we've said at these meetings previously, is we are looking for these to be the subgroups to be community led, and asking for people within the community board to lead on these, to highlight the issues they want to see as the priorities for there, and to lead on that. We're happy to support the community board members going forward in relation to that. There's been a couple of suggestions there. If the board wanted to agree a couple of those to be our priority subgroups of this, then we are happy to take that forward. We do see PB as being a clear one for that going forward. In the next year or so, we do have to start taking forward the PB agenda in terms of mainstreaming PB across the council area, and we're really keen to try and do that. So if people are interested in any specific groups, please let us know the groups you're interested in participating in, and we'll take that forward as a matter of urgency on behalf of the group, in conjunction with a community rep who wants to lead on that within the area.
Could I suggest, Matt, what you do after tonight's meeting is resend the list of suggested groups to all the members and all the community groups, and ask for volunteers to put their names against those groups?
Yeah, we're certainly happy to do that again, Chair.
And we can move that forward quite quickly. I noticed I'd asked Christine this morning for a list of the groups, suggested subgroups, and a note from the list that was issued previously, there was a couple of groups missing from that. So it'd just be useful to clarify what subgroups are being recommended, and if you could circulate that tomorrow, then we can look at the issue and include the ones that have been omitted from the list that Christine sent me this morning. Okay, so that's agreed. Everybody, as a task, is to take that away, look at it, and volunteer for the subgroups you think may be relevant to you. Any comments? No comments? Moving on. Consultation plans around town and community hubs. Matt, is this going to be brief?
Yeah, very brief, Chair. It's just to let you know that following on the reports that came to the last round of awards, that there's going to be further localised meetings in relation to that. I'm just trying to find the note that's got the list on the community. I know there isn't one for the Northern Corridor, but we wanted just to make you aware of the other ones that are taking place. And the one that might, in terms of the 8th and 9th of March, for Kilsyth and Cumbernauld, there'll be meetings taking place. And if people are interested in participating in that, we can send out links to anyone who's interested in taking that forward.
Can I say, I participated briefly in the last town visions presentation that took place for Cumbernauld, Coatbridge, Airdrie and the Northern Corridor. And I was quite surprised when I raised the question on the chat bar with the officer that was leading that discussion, or leading on the town visions issue, that there seems to be nothing being proposed for the Northern Corridor. In fact, I got a response from him, and I copied out the response from the chat bar. And it says, in response to John Wilson's comments about no town vision for the Northern Corridor, that is because it does not contain a recognised town. The community's aspirations within the Northern Corridor will be addressed by the local outcome improvement plans, project managed by the Community Matters team, as discussed at the last round of community board meetings. Now, I'm quite concerned that we have 8 town visions, and we seem to have no vision for the Northern Corridor coming from the same officers that are leading on the town visions. And we did at the last meeting, and it's minuted, a rep was to be invited to the next meeting to provide an update. So one, I would ask, why is there no rep? And I'm glad there's no rep tonight, because it would have been another presentation, no doubt. But we really need to, and I would make the plea to all council officers that we need to get a vision for the Northern Corridor that fits in with the aspirations. You've talked about Kilsyth has a vision, and yet the Northern Corridor will shortly have a larger population than Kilsyth, and there doesn't seem to be any vision coming forward apart from the LOIP that we spoke about earlier for the Northern Corridor. So I'd make that plea. Can we get some action done on that, Isabel? Isabel, you're muted.
Sorry, folks. Matt, maybe something that you could comment on, or you could make people aware of. We've got a situation where we've got a community hub strategy, if you like. Based on that strategy, Gartcosh Resident Tents Association carried out a community hub survey, which we'll send through to Community Matters once the analysis is finished. We've got the council putting through in their finance committee permission for monies to buy a ground for a school. On the same ground, we've got a developer putting in planning application, and we've got Charles in your 21's project, can't remember his second name, running around planning Gartcosh Primary School with absolutely no consultation regarding a community hub. Now, we're not looking for a school. We have no community centre. We have no football pitches. We have absolutely zero in terms of community asset. And when we seen the Community Investment Fund, and I met with Des Murray, and actually he told me about it before it was announced, and we were told about community hubs, I said that is the answer to Gartcosh being able to get the resources that they need. And if the council are not going ahead putting a school in, and next to that they do not have enough land to provide the amenities that are needed, and we then take second place yet again. So if this is an example of consulting the community, speaking to the community, it's a poor example. Social media is just full of people making speculation about, is there 72 houses by Balfour Beatty going on that land, or is the school going on that land? And if the school's going on that land, where are the amenities? Because there's no land other than for the school. So, and we don't have a strategy for the Northern Corridor. You're only interested in town hubs. And I'll go back to the Community Empowerment Act yet again. Northern Corridor is a defined locality. So therefore, we are due the same resources as Cumbernauld and as Coatbridge and everywhere else, and we're being ignored. And this school going up is a classic example, and I would like to know what our elected representatives are doing about it in terms of getting knowledge around this.
Any comments? Any response?
Chair, I'll certainly pass on the comments from Isabel to the team that's dealing with the consultations in relation to the town community hubs.
Yeah, that'd be useful, Matt, in terms of trying to take it forward, because as you've heard tonight, there is concern in the Northern Corridor that the resources aren't being put in to try and develop a clear strategy apart from the LOIPs in terms of trying to address some of the social deprivation issues. So it'd be useful if we could get a better master plan for the Northern Corridor. If there's no other comments, move on to the next item on the agenda is the petitions, which I'm presuming there's no petitions tonight. Right, next one is community matters input from local community groups. Is there anything being notified to you, Matt, or is there anybody desperately wanting to get an issue put forward that they haven't discussed already tonight?
No.
Brandon?
Can I raise the elephant in the room, which of course is the fact that we don't have anything to talk about health and social care within the Northern Corridor and its provision, which is now bearing in mind that the new Monklands Replacement Hospital is to go to Wester Moffat, has become even more political.
Anybody else? Isabel?
Just to echo what Brandon's saying, we've now got a population of nearly 150,000 that will be affected by the decision of the hospital not coming to Gatcosh. Now, I live in Gatcosh, and it might be I particularly wouldn't want a hospital in my backyard, but I know the north of Lanarkshire are quite concerned because we've already got an agreement that Summer Northern Corridor goes into Glasgow, but Cumbernauld will not use the new hospital, Kilsyth will not use the new hospital, Bells Hill has raised issues. When they go to the motorway, they're 11 minutes to Glasgow Royal Infirmary, so they're not going to use it. And parts of Coatbridge, Bargedy, etc., they're not going to use it. Now, the decision for the hospital not to be in Gatcosh has been made, but I would like to know what provision. I don't know what 150,000 of a population is in the referral pattern to Glasgow. And I would like to know that Glasgow, as a person who has to get treatment in Glasgow, I would like to know that that treatment is not going to be undermined in some way because of the cross-border flow from North Lanarkshire, because Lanarkshire Health Board is just abdicated as far as providing healthcare, secondary healthcare to the Northern Corridor and the north of Lanarkshire. And when we look at primary healthcare, the GP situation is critical, and no one comes on. When it was the previous setup, what we got was reports. We got what each health rep or the fire service or the police wanted to tell us in statistics or whatever, but we're not getting a discussion into what is the health. We haven't even got a health centre, not one health centre in the area, and we asked for that. And when we got the clinic getting put on at the end of the school in Muirhead, it's a like-for-like service. But we asked for that to be a health centre, and it's not, it's a clinic. I mean, you've got patients going into clinics and getting blood took, or going in to see their GP and getting blood took or specimens taken, and they've got to come out and go to a clinic in Muirhead to deliver it. And in this day and age, that's ridiculous.
Right, Claire.
It was just to say, we got emails before the 12th of February saying that we needed to submit items for this part of the agenda. I put a couple in and one's been addressed, and I'm happy to wait for feedback on the second. But it would be good to actually have those coming out on the agenda, the points people want to raise, just to make sure that they are getting somewhere, that they're not being buried.
Okay. Right, thank you, Claire.
Chair, I could just come in there briefly. I can assure you they're not being buried. And there was certainly before the 12th of February, there was previous opportunities for people also to submit items for the agenda. We do encourage that right from the outset of the board meetings. So just to reaffirm that, that's something that's done on a regular basis.
Right, thank you, Matt. Any other comments before I move on? If there's no other comments, the input from community planning partners, I've got Neil McLeod, I think it is. Neil McLeod wants to make a couple of comments from, I'll not repeat what he's put in the chat bar, but he's wanting to make a couple of comments. Neil.
Thank you, Chair. No, it's just a very brief summary in terms of criminality over the last period. I'll try and move away from statistics and just cover the main kind of summary of events. So first of all, we had an attempted murder in Glenboy, Marnock Drive, which I'm sure the locals there will be more than aware of, where there was a gun fired at a parked vehicle on that street, and I targeted the track back at the sole occupant of the vehicle. Just wish to update that since that time there's been a 29-year-old male who's been arrested and he's been remanded in custody for that. Other serious crime, a robbery, again, it's very recent. This happened on Thursday of last week in Greyston Manor estate in Christon, whereby unfortunately 4 males forced entry to a family's home and managed to steal a 4-figure sum of cash prior to making off in the vehicle, which was found by police burnt out close by. This is potentially linked to other very similar was in the Glasgow and the east of Scotland area. So there's a national as well as local inquiry into this, still very much ongoing. In terms of serious assaults, for wards 5 and 6, there were 2 serious assaults over the last period, so over the last 3 months, both of which took place in Moodiesburn. And it was the same incident, effectively. It was 2 males armed with weapons who assaulted each other and came about serious injuries. So they've both been arrested in regards to that. On the weapons theme, there were 2 males arrested in the middle of January after threatening an employee of a takeaway in Cumbernauld Road in Muirhead, armed with a knife. So police were close by and they effected an arrest straight away of a 27 and a 28-year-old male who, again, were both remanded in custody for that. On the drugs theme, there was a cannabis cultivation seized, quite a large cannabis cultivation seized from an address in the Steps area in December, as well as a smaller cultivation in the Hilltop Road area of Moodiesburn. That area of Moodiesburn, between Hilltop Road and the lanes of Heathfield, have caused us issues, which I mentioned in the last meeting, if you remember. So over the last period, there's been 6 issues or incidents of drug misuse, which have been detected throughout that area over the last period. Acquisitive crime, as we always expect in the lead up to Christmas, we saw a spike in most areas within the Northern Corridor in relation to acquisitive crime, mainly thefts from vehicles and thefts of vehicles. The main areas affected were Christon and Muirhead and also Gartcosh. Gartcosh, there was a spike of 5 incidents of vehicles and there were no arrests made in relation to that. However, we had more success in the Christon and Muirhead. There was a 49-year-old male and a 50-year-old male arrested for a series of thefts in these areas, and again, they were both remanded in custody. Then last thing I want to touch on is many will be aware of a major incident we had in Gartcosh in relation to a road traffic collision in the A752. That was on the 7th of February, and that was as a result of a drink driver who caused extensive damage after crashing his vehicle into what's described as a gas station, and that effectively shut off the gas supply to 273 households in the nearby area. So there was a huge response to this, and the likes of Scottish Gas and the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service and North Lanarkshire Council really came to the fore with this one in terms of providing a suitable response. It was right in the middle of a real spike of very cold weather. So North Lanarkshire Council in particular managed to effectively provide emergency heating for the vulnerable who were affected by the shut-off of gas. And the gas supply was thankfully reinstated later on in the same day. The male driver was arrested at the scene and charged with a number of road traffic offences. And that's it in terms of criminality, unless anyone has...
Right, thank you, Inspector MacLeod. Are there any questions or comments to Inspector MacLeod? No, nobody want to take this opportunity. Can I thank you for the detailed report? It's useful for the communities to know what's happening in the communities and look forward to regular reports in the future. Is there any other community? Sorry, Councillor Lennon.
John, thank you. Neil, I'll drop you a wee email in the next couple of days. I spoke to Rose. We're going to come back and try and see if we can arrange that meeting in relation to the 752.
No problem, that's ideal, thank you.
Okay. If there's no other comments, so are there any other community planning partners wish to make a contribution? No, nobody else. Can I, if there's no other, is there any other Compton business? Anybody desperate to raise anything? If there's nobody desperate, Claire? No, I was just moving your glasses, was it Claire? Sorry. Okay, if there's no other Compton business, the date of next meeting is still to be confirmed as I understand it. Can I thank you all for your sorry? Isabel?
It's Anne-Marie.
Sorry, Anne-Marie, we can hear you now.
I had made issues this evening, apologies. I just wanted
That's the digital connectivity, Anne-Marie.
Just with regards to raising other issues, recently Cardown Community Med alerted to illegal snares being set in the grounds of Cardown Community Meadow, Frankfield Lock and Cardown Moss. This was reported to police. They did attend and they said that they would be making a further report to what would be their animal welfare officer. So I would be interested to know in any update with regards to that.
Chair, I can come in there if you wish.
Yes, please.
Yeah, the end result for that was our wildlife liaison officer attended the scene also, and on surveying the scene, the injured animal, it was established that there were in fact no illegal snares. I think there was an assumption that that may have been the case. It looks like it's been attacked by another animal.
Right. Thank you. Anne-Marie?
I'm sorry, but I'm going to need to differ. We did have a local expert go and have a look at that, and it was identified. We actually snapped it and broke it after the officers attended because it was right next to the footpath where it could have been a danger to any small children going off the path or any animals maybe off the leash or such.
Certainly, that's the update that I was given. That's how the incident was marked off. I'll put my email address on the chat bar, Anne-Marie, if you get.
Okay. Right, are there any other reports from community partners? If there's no other reports, no other comments. Somebody's right. Can I'm about to close the meeting unless somebody tells me they desperately want to come in.
Chair, I don't know if Brian Kane from Scottish Fire and Rescue wants to come in. Try to intimate to come in there.
Right, Councillor Lannan. Brian, do you want to have anything to report?
Yeah, I actually provided the report. Give me 2 seconds.
I think it's Brian's connection has given us feedback. Sorry, I can't hear you, Brian. You're muted. Still muted. No.
That's that. I think I'm now.
Right. Right. Sorry, Brian, you're still muted. Brian, could I suggest if there's a report you want to give, could you submit it in writing to Matt, and Matt can circulate it around the development board so we can see a written report, if that's okay? Thank you very much indeed. If there is nothing else, can I thank you all for your perseverance and your attendance tonight. As I said, the date of the next meeting will be issued prior to the meeting. I would urge all the community representatives to engage in the process that's been established through the development boards so that we can actually get the community's voice heard loud and clear. And I know we do get it heard loud and clear at the development board meetings, but I'd urge you all to get involved, particularly when Matt sends out the list of subgroups, if people could clearly indicate, and also if there are other members of your groups that you think may be interested in being involved in these subgroups, make them aware of that, and hopefully we can get good participation in the subgroups and good feedback. So can I thank you all for your attendance? Can I ask you all to take care and stay safe? Good night.
Well, thanks, Chair. Thank you.